Welcome to the Tactics Meeting. I'm your host, Dan Smiley. Today on the program, we're going to talk about the internet. Yes, you all know what the internet is, but how about using it in response? Many times we go to locations where the internet is spotty at best or non-existent, and that's just not good enough anymore. So today we're going to look at the options and talk about a couple of different use cases that we've used over the last month or so. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about our sponsor, Portage Bay Solutions. Portage Bay is a rapid software development organization that I've worked with since 2013, I think. They developed the Respond app for NJ Resources. They developed a fake Twitter app that I used for a long time, an application for managing injects, and now they've developed the Easy 213 for resource ordering. We developed it for Clean Pacific last year and have since used it in, half a dozen tabletop exercises, including the Washington State Maritime exercise that I just conducted in Port Angeles last week. In the hot wash, comments about how easy the resource ordering process was using Easy 213 were, kind of amazing even to me. People who don't normally like to use computers said that the process was flawless, seamless. Well, what more can you ask for? If you'd like to take a look at Easy 213, if you're tired of using paper, resource ordering or spreadsheets or all the other things that we've tried during the pandemic, this is where you need to go. So jump on over to portagebaysolutions.com, take a look at Easy 213, or give me a call and we can talk about that experience. I also want to thank Suzanne for joining our individual sponsorship. It's through individual small contributions like that that allow me to continue to record these podcasts. So if you find the podcast valuable, jump on over to the podcast at thetacticsmeeting.com and consider, donating $1 a month. So now let's get on to this amazing episode. On my last podcast, we had a panel that talked about virtual command posts and some of the best practices that we have developed or identified over the last 2 years of the pandemic. And really what we've discovered with virtual command posts is that they're here to stay. And the idea that a hybrid model where some people are present and some people are remote is not really a thing anymore because there's always going to be somebody who's remote. But to make this work, we have to have good internet. And that's not always the case. I remember years ago we talked about how we are going to deal with remote locations out on the coast of Washington where there isn't good internet, and how we'll default back to paper ICS forms and a full paper resource ordering process. But that's not necessary and frankly just not good enough anymore. So what can we do? Well, let's take a look at two instances over the last month where we brought internet to the scene. And the first one is the fire aboard the fishing vessel Kodiak Enterprise in Tacoma. And the second is WSMIC's tabletop exercise in Port Angeles. So in the Kodiak Enterprise incident, we were mobilizing equipment in the morning, and along with ordering boom boats and oil spill response vessels and drones, we asked MSRC to bring their Starlink internet package. And the Starlink by itself will support 12, 15 users at pretty good speed. And I'll talk a little bit more about Starlink and my experience with that technology in a minute. But right out of the bat, we pulled that off. But MSRC and FEMA have other options available and MSRC calls it the CRD. And this is an internet package. It comes on a little cart. Remember these internet comm suites used to be the size of a 40-foot container, and now they look like the size of a large barbecue. And they hook this up and wire up the command post for Wi-Fi and, if necessary, hard lines. And the CRD uses Starlink as a backup. So they connect the Starlink internet directly into the rest of the Wi-Fi network. And this is where I kind of lose the bubble on how exactly they do it. But it's brilliant in that on one level, it will fail over from the primary internet connection to Starlink as the backup. And at another level, it'll do packet sharing. So it can use the Starlink for one thing, like phones, while using the CRD for video and voice. And if we're going to use virtual command posts, if we're going to use software like Easy 213 or like the ICS 201 app that I use for response for Wismic, then the internet is critical. So no longer can we just turn around and say, hey, I hope the hotel has internet. So we ordered up the Starlink internet in the initial round of resource ordering, reactive resource ordering, and they brought it, and we did end up setting it up. Uh, on the dock at the response. But later on, we needed to shift the command post, and we identified the La Quinta Inn as in Tacoma as the location to go to. And the hotel had internet, but as you all know, hotel internet is notoriously not great. I remember doing a drill in Seattle. It was a number of years ago. It was at the Marriott waterfront, and the Marriott IT folks are like, yeah, we got great internet. It's it's fast. It's robust. It's all great. And the IT guys for the responsible party who were setting up the drill. They came in and they tested it. It's like, yeah, it's super fast. And then once 300 people walked into the room, it was unusable, completely unusable. So anybody at this point who says, we're just going to rely on the internet in the facility we arrive at, frankly, they're on crack. So you need to consider that the hotel's internet, that the facility's internet is tertiary internet, and you need to bring primary and secondary with you, which means you need to order it right out of the bat. So we turned back to MSRC and said, "Bring me the CRD," and they did. They brought it to the La Quinta Inn. They set it up. They immediately had Wi-Fi, and they use their own Wi-Fi routers and switches. They don't rely on the residential package that comes with Starlink or these other things. And this allows them to have much more control and much more stability over the internet package. So even though any one of us could go out and get a Starlink account and set up their own satellite internet, and I'll tell you about my experience with that in a second. Uh, for an event, you really want somebody who knows what they're doing to come in and set it up. We toured FEMA's facility up in Bothell about a month ago, and they have very similar equipment. So if you need to get internet into the command post and you're out in a remote location, or frankly, anywhere, because like I said, we just did it in the hotel in Tacoma, and it was so much better than what was available otherwise. But to get FEMA to come out and do it, you're going to need to order it through a trusted agency. And for oil spill response, that means either the Coast Guard or the EPA. The Coast Guard is able to get FEMA to activate their equipment with just a call to the regional administrator, and then they put together an ordering package to guarantee payment. And the Coast Guard does that by opening up the Oil Spill Trust Fund. And we did that during the Kodiak Enterprise, not for communications, but to have the EPA come in and do air monitoring. It was the same process. Coast Guard did the ordering and worked their interagency magic and paid for it out of the trust fund, and then I'm assuming uh, rebuild the responsible party for those costs. So there is a way to get access to this governmental equipment that without going through the Stafford Act or having a governor's emergency declaration, you can do it through your federal response partners. So that's what we did for Kodiak Enterprise, and they ended up running that for the next week and a half out of the command post there. We set up our drill in Port Angeles at the Port Angeles Yacht Club, and shout out to the PA Yacht Club. They uh, took it upon themselves as their civic duty to help support environmental response in the maritime community, and they gave us the use of that facility for 2 days for free and were really helpful in getting in and getting set up. But as you might expect, the internet that they have is not great. And so we set up MSRC's CRD package with the backup Starlink internet, and they wired the whole facility for Wi-Fi and for hard drops. And at the end of the day, when we did our hot wash, the rock solid, very fast internet was one of the positives listed by every section that evaluated the drill. There were literally zero problems with the internet. And so it's just clear that if we're going to be relying on Microsoft Teams and other response software that requires us to have access to the internet, then we as response managers and planners need to be able to bring robust internet to the scene. Now, I've been testing Starlink myself. As many of you know, I recently bought a sailboat and I want to work from the boat from time to time. And the only way to do that was to get really fast, reliable internet. So I bought a Starlink package. And the Starlink satellite internet hardware for mobile use costs $600. You buy the satellite dish, it comes with the modem, and you pay $150 a month. And this mobility package is designed for portable use, for land-based use. They envisioned uh, people traveling around the country in their recreational vehicles or people out going camping. And so you pull out the dish and you hook the Ethernet cable up to it and you plug it into the modem and you plug the modem into an outlet. And provided you've set your account up, the dish finds the satellites on its own, and about 3 minutes later, you're online sending email, joining Zoom meetings. It's just the greatest. So I bought it for the boat. I've used it in Port Angeles, in Friday Harbor, in Westport, in Tacoma, and although the speeds vary, I got amazing speed out in Westport. I was getting 190 megabits per second down and 17 megabits per second up. That is like twice the speed I get out of my Comcast business internet. But when I went to Friday Harbor, I assume there are a whole bunch of Starlinks there because I got my speed throttled. I was getting about 25 megabits per second down and 1.5, 2 megabits per second up. And yet that was still enough to conduct a Zoom meeting without any blurring or drop calls. So when you're looking at a Starlink as an option, and I think you should, Clean Rivers has a Starlink package that they've deployed in the field successfully. They're using it as backup internet for their land-based internet in their command post. So Starlink has really uh, 4 packages to look at, 5 if you count maritime, and I guess they just recently announced aviation as well, but that's intended for airliners like Alaska Airlines, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the standard package is intended to replace your regular home internet use. You order the dish, you give them an address, a zip code. It's intended to not move. You hook it to your house, that's your internet, and it works great. The second level is priority, which is really the same thing as standard, but and it's deployed in fixed locations, but it's intended for business users and government institutions and people who are going to do really heavy uh, internet use, software developers and that kind of thing, and it costs a little more. The next level, and the level that I purchased, is mobile, and it's designed for portable use, land-based use. It's not intended to be used while you're in motion. Again, RVs were the thing that they really had in mind, or locations where internet is spotty or unavailable. And this solves the problem. If you're out on the Washington coast or somewhere remote, you just set up the Starlink and boom, you're online. It also solves the telephone problem because you can use Wi-Fi calling on your phone. And so now, by hooking your phone up to the local Wi-Fi over the satellite, you're making telephone calls just like anywhere else. Uh, I used Wi-Fi calling really successfully when I was traveling in Europe a few years ago, and I just wait till I was in the hotel or coffee shop or whatever to make a phone call. I didn't get another SIM card, and that worked great. So mobile works great. It's not intended for in motion use, meaning while I'm out on the sailboat, I wouldn't leave it up and running because that violates the terms of service. I haven't actually tried it, but I did read an article that says it works really well, although Starlink has been tamping down on people's ability to do that. And then the next level up is mobile priority. And mobile priority is intended for mobile use. So if I wanted to use it on the boat, if you wanted to put it on your OSRV, if you wanted internet on the command vessel, you would use mobile priority and you would be able to get internet while in motion. There is a separate maritime account, which comes with a different style of dish. It's a flat panel that is apparently super sensitive and can lock onto satellites while you're in motion. And that hardware costs $2,500 instead of the $600 for the regular mobile dish. And the uh, monthly fee is really high. I don't even know exactly what it is. $5,000 a month. It is intended to compete with Iridium and the other satellite internet providers that have been putting dishes on commercial vessels for many years, only with the speed that you expect at home. Amazon is supposed to be putting up a competitive low Earth orbit satellite solution to compete with Starlink. You get these billionaires who own rocket companies like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and they gotta compete with each other. So Amazon is and Blue Origin are putting up another set of satellites, which is rumored to be faster and cheaper. Maybe that'll drive the cost of this whole thing down for everybody. The takeaway for me is that as emergency managers, you must have a plan to bring internet to the field. There's no longer the argument that, well, we just have to be able to default to paper. We've moved past that. So find a way, find a contract, buy a Starlink connection, do whatever, but make it a first priority to get out there and get the facility wired up with internet. I've been doing it for a while. It works really great. So that's it for today's episode. If you have ideas for a program or would like to be a guest, you can email me. The email address is podcast at the tactics meeting online. You can call me. The phone number is 206-495-3805. And now let's all get back